I'm being scolded for bringing my lunch into class.
And then we have two very incredibly colorful characters who are loud, and we're sitting in opposite ends of the rooms but talking to each other.
Right.
And they never got the idea that that probably wasn't a good idea, but after a while,
yeah,
so there were certain students that I had to focus, because don't forget this was the beginning of the year.
Sure.
Right.
It wasn't like it is now, so you have to establish that in the beginning.
As far as
or else
limitations
you
go,
lost
maybe
out.
the beginning and the end of the year, or something along the lines of that. So
you know, that's
it's the honeymoon.
That's a really good question. That's a really good question about like the facilitator or the teachers, the coaches changing behavior themselves.
Right.
Like if it's being noted how many times, and I'm the teacher in the classroom, how many times I actually reinforce behavior, or like praise someone, and it's being tallied. Bet your butt, I'm gonna really be focused on it.
I always wonder about certain things like, am I calling on kids evenly? Am I calling on boys more? Am I calling on girls more? Am I calling on the same kids? You know, so I think about those reflective questions, and so like a study like this would be fascinating, I think, for any of us. The other thing I was wondering about is parent consent forms went home.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And then, did you have any? I know this is a a qualitative study, and I'm accustomed to doing quantitative study.
Right.
No, other way.
Vice versa.
Yeah. So I always do, like the big narrative stuff.
Real in depth.
So, but I was wondering if you had two things. Any data about, any quotes from the kids?
I was actually thinking about that earlier today, if I should include that in my paper as well.
I think that would be more illustrative.
Right.
Personally.
The quality piece.
I have to go to a meeting.
And then
thanks for coming. Thank you.
The only other thing.
It's been fun having them here.
Yeah. You should keep them.
Believe me.
Do you have any? Do you have any data about actually, like, if Emily ever said, now, if we look on the chart and we see what this sounds like, or
we didn't,
because the chart came up in the beginning of your presentation,
right? And it kind of just
focused on the.
It hung there. I guess it was kind of like, I don't know, for an analogy, like when you first play a board game or whatever, you go over the instructions and then you kick them to the side. I mean, you still have that idea of how you're supposed to play the game, and at least it was mentioned.
Right.
But we definitely never said, look up, are you on task? Does that look like this?
Right.
That should have been done, definitely, I think.
But we didn't necessarily should it have been done or not done.
But I think that was steered
done. Could you? Because there's there seems to be a gap in the middle of the presentation.
Right.
But.
No, that's true. That's a good idea.
Right,
I'll definitely add that to my limitations.
Because I think that's part of the deal with setting up the expectations is continually reinforcing.
Just going back to it on and on. Right.
And I also wondered whether or not you should have started the study the first day of school.
Just right off the bat.
Right off the bat.
Yeah.
Set the pace and
figure
that out.
Mission slips and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
That would have been.
Because it was all a learning curve.
You know,
right.
The other thing too is that kids are really sensitive to novelty. So I think that you could see in the data that after the novelty wore off, they didn't. Yeah. I don't know whether they saw it as a skill or saw it as important. Clearly it was doing something, because then the wheels came off.
Right.
Well, I think once we threw the pizza party at them, then
they were like, oh,
pizza.
I don't know you anything now.
It's a whole new world to me. I mean, if I have to work for pizza, I'll do it.
That's like a whole developmental thing about. Of course.
The first couple of weeks of school are like the honeymoon anyways, as far as the kids' behavior go, so it's kind of why I wish we might have did it later in the season.
They were a little mercenary.
Yeah, serious.
I don't know how appropriate this question is, but how do you think they felt about this experience? Or did they think about it?
They did. Well, actually, a couple of kids are like, why are you looking at our class and nobody else's? And I told them right off, it was your perfect time in the day. You're not first when you come in, you're half asleep. And then there's like specials and other things throughout the day. I didn't want to choose my flex class, 7th and 8th graders, the remedial class. And then at the end of the day, I feel they're just ready to get out of here, so they're not going to be invested in it anyway. So that's kind of why I chose it, and I told them that. So I hope that clarified it for them. I didn't want to single them out.
Well, it's informed consent.
Okay, so that's...
What's that?
It's informed consent.
Yeah.
I mean, you gave them some sort of reason
Right.
to
But
not,
no one,
And it's
no one
legit,
gave them
too.
any grief about doing it or conducting it or complained about doing it.
Right. They weren't forced to. I told them, if you want to partake in the study, you will get a pizza party in the end. Just bring this form home and have your mom sign it. That's all you got to do.
Yeah.
And after that, you don't even have to if you don't want to. But they all, I think there was one student that didn't participate that was in class. I didn't get their permission slip back.
What's your hunch about the connection to classroom expectations and management and learning? Did you get into that at all in your study?
What do you
So,
mean?
like, if there's better classroom, we kind of get it. If there's
the
better
workshop we went to.
Yeah, the better the classroom
the
management
learning
is.
greater. So I was just wondering if you
Right.
went into that at all, or
Now that's another good
That's a
point
huge
right there.
difference.
If I could have looked at their grades, that's very interesting, and that's the type of stuff I definitely want to write down. Because if I were to do this again, I think I would definitely tie that into.
You can have my notes.
Awesome, thank
But
you.
you can also think of that
Secretary.
time of the year we were also into the kneecap review, which
Just hit it
For
towards
some-
the end.
yeah,
Oh,
Yeah.
and for some of those kids it's just
Factors.
what a pain. Yeah.
Right.
But it's really interesting to me because you think about developmentally where they're at, and they still are, they're not there
They're
in terms
concrete.
of, but maybe they never will be, but because they don't see that good behavior might reap a positive versus a negative consequences. I mean, for the most part,
That makes me wonder what their experience has been prior to the
Yeah.
middle school
Mhm.
to
That's good.
get them to a point where they have really no ability to state that a consequence can be a good, positive thing.
or even just to get
Or maybe
intrinsic
just to
reward from
teach it.
doing well.
Right,
for
that's a
themselves,
huge
you know? It's
thing
like, okay,
with
what's
the
in it
type
for me?
1
What are you
person.
gonna
You
do
need
for
to
me?
explicitly
well, exactly.
teach that
Like, that's a huge
sometimes
difference,
there are good
cause
things
and
that
effect.
happen based on what you do.
Right.
Right.
Well, and it would be really
I think
interesting.
yes is
It'd be
Yeah.
really interesting to follow up with a survey about locus of control.
Yeah, it's the whole self
Just
Right.
like, did this experience, so like after Christmas, just did this experience put it on their radar screen? I mean, I suppose it would have been good to do it before and after, but even now it might be interesting to see, like, is it on their radar screen that they're actually in control of anything?
Right. Yeah, whatever they do.
And they try so hard to control everything out here when I was
Right.
the only thing they...
And we were actually talking earlier, Keen and I, about certain teachers using that scary, fear-induced class, or to keep their class on their best behavior, but at the same time, the kid that's scared isn't relaxed and alert.
That's right.
You know what I mean? So even though your classroom could be managed very well,
So I shouldn't keep saying I'm going to come over here and poke you in the eye.
Yes.
you do this.
Stop that.
But-
And I think we all, one of the things
Coming
that
upside your head.
I think we all really try hard to diffuse bad behavior with
Yeah.
humor.
Right.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
it.
I have
Right,
always
exactly
used
right.
humor
Yeah.
to sort of make my point, whether it's
You know,
understood or
Emily,
not. But
I
I
have
try
to say-
really hard to
I
get
have to
around a
say-
lot of bad stuff
Exactly, yeah.
with
And it-
humor.